Good evening. Welcome to the March 10th meeting of the Historical Commission of Lower Makefield Township. I'm Dr. Helen Hines, and present are the other members, current members of the Historical Commission. Could I have you all just say hello?
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, we're missing Barbara. Okay, we're missing
Okay.
Barbara.
I was going to ask you, is she coming or is she still?
I had not heard from her at all. I don't know what is going on with Barb. Dan, we are down one member. Eric Rockenbush has submitted his resignation, so we actually need to be put on the list for more nominees.
Okay.
And I tried to tell Jim that, but somehow the message was not getting through.
Okay. Katie McVan is Kurt's new assistant, and she maintains what we call the ABC list. So if she's received that resignation, she should be updating the ABC list, but I'll double check with her to make sure that she's done that.
Okay, thank you. She's my neighbor. I can walk it across.
Oh, even better.
Okay, Dan, I would like you to, we needed to reorganize and we didn't do it in January. So I'd like to ask you first to handle that for us.
Would you like me to be the chair pro tem? Okay. So I'll do this relatively informally, but I will temporarily serve as your chair pro tem to take nominees for, well, Helen, before we do that, as the chair pro tem, I will take nominees for the chair position, and then whoever is named the chair will take over as the chair of the meeting and accept nominations for any other positions that this board uses. That's how we do it as supervisors. So,
perfect.
So at this time, I will temporarily step in as the chair pro tem and accept nominations for the chair of the Historical Commission. Any member like to make a motion?
I'd like to nominate Helen.
All right, we have a motion. Would we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Typically, we can handle this one of two ways. If there's, and this is how we do it with the supervisors, so that's why I'm saying we can handle it one of two ways. We have a motion and a second, so we can have a discussion. And if the motion passes, then we have Dr. Hines will be the chair. If it does not pass, then we take a second motion and see where we go from there. That's typical. So if everyone's okay with that, we have a motion and a second. I'll open it up to discussion for members of the board, if any. All right, hearing none. I don't foresee this taking too long. Now to be technically accurate, John, do we have any public comment on this motion?
John,
you're on mute, John, if you can hear me. We're checking to see if there's any public comment on the motion.
Sorry, no public comment.
I didn't think so. And with that, see, I haven't had my chair gavel in a while, so I'm a little rusty.
You're drawing this out, Dan.
I know, it's fun. So we have a motion and a second. With that, I'll call it the question. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Oh, it's Barbara. Yay, Barbara.
I didn't see any, but I'll ask anyway. Any opposed? No, with that, the motion carries, and I will gladly hand over the proverbial mallet here to Dr. Hines.
Thank you, Dan. We should have a co-chair. Or do we want to? Did you just have a secretary and do you want to have a co-chair? Do you want to have a secondary secretary and a treasurer?
Well, from my end, Helen, not that I don't know if I have too much say in this, but I'll chime in just for a second. In case, I think it's always a good idea to have a vice chair in case you're not. Co-chair is a little tricky with some of these. Some of these just running a meeting. A vice chair, in case you're absent or something, is okay. Is a nice deal. I don't know if you don't have a budget, then you probably don't need a.
We do have a small budget.
Okay, so you could have a treasurer.
Yeah, we have,
Who takes your meeting minutes? I forget how you all do meeting minutes. So Beck,
one of us does, so there's a
okay, one of you
secretary
does.
as
So,
well.
so yeah, it makes sense to have all those positions then. So I'll be quiet and let you handle it.
No, that's fine. So I'll take some nominations for vice chair. Anybody want that position? Anybody willing to serve as a vice chair? Should something happen, we need somebody to carry on.
I would serve as the vice chair.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Is there a second? Barbara. Any public comment, John?
No public comment.
Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We need our secretary. Becky, could you continue to do that?
Sure.
And Becky, if you ever need a backup, I can help you too.
Okay. I'm taking the minutes now. It's almost easier on Zoom because now I'm just typing them up as we're. But yeah. Okay.
A
Thanks.
second? I'll nominate, or chair can't nominate. Come on. Somebody else nominate.
I'll nominate Becky Diamond as the secretary of our group.
I'll second that nomination.
All in favor? Yes. And treasurer. Now, Joe, you've just volunteered as vice chair. So are we going to pass the treasurer to another person, or do you?
I think, yeah, we could do that. I could do
Or-
treasurer if that's all right.
Hmm?
I could do treasurer if that's all right.
Sure. Would you
Perfect.
like to do that? We'll give him an office, and we're sure to keep him here. Would somebody nominate James as treasurer?
I'll nominate.
Okay, second?
I'll second James as
One
treasurer.
second. Will any more discussion? All right, any comments from the public?
No public comment.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think that's it for our members' jobs at this point. So the person who's left out, which is Barbara, you're going to be sort of the go-to person for public relations, Barbara.
That's fine.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much, Dan, for helping out with that. We need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I have a motion to approve the minutes.
I would motion to approve the minutes.
And a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I think they were great minutes. Thank you, Becky. I have noticed that Katie has taken over at the township, and so the minutes tonight, after they're approved, Becky will go to Katie at the township, and you can her address is very easy. The treasurer's report's been resolved, so we now have the money's resolved. I guess we have about a budget of about $4,000, Dan, in case you're interested, plus a yearly budget. What was it, Joe? 1,000?
500? No,
500, just for informational and educational purposes, should somebody want to attend a conference or do something like that. I did hear from the state marker program yesterday. So this is hot off the press, but basically we've been denied.
Really?
Yes, I was a little miffed, I have to say.
It's in the National Register.
They said that the nomination, they really hesitate to nominate cemeteries because it seems that it is of such local interest that it doesn't rise to the level of something that would interest the entire state or nation, which is what they want their monuments to be. At this point, they're getting very picky about installing new monuments, and they said, "Oh, you can do your own at your expense that looks a lot like ours, and no one will know." Or you can resubmit, and you can resubmit for 3 years in a row, and then you have to not submit for 3 years. So, and then they had a whole list of people to call to contact about the nomination. So I called her. I called the chairperson of the SHPO commission that handles this and asked her, why specifically the nomination was rejected. And she said that the way that we worded it was really of interest to the group when we talked about the Ganges and the Black. She said, we had never heard that story at the state, and now we're all excited about it, but we just don't think it's the right place to honor that particular thing with the monument. And our monument didn't even say anything about that. So I don't know how that would have worked anyway. But the verbiage didn't say anything about that. But she said, we were thinking you could rewrite it and focus on the Ganges incident. And I said, well, the problem with that is that the original father, Samson Ganges, who was a freed slave of the ship Ganges. James, you've heard the story, I think? Okay, the ship Ganges was brought to Philadelphia, 1,500-mile voyage from Cuba. Instead of selling the cargo, this is in 1801, instead of selling the cargo, the captain, Mulroney, decided to haul it back to Philadelphia to a free port. And he consigned the entire shipment out of 132 slaves that they captured on 2 slave ships. 118 survived the voyage. And they consigned them to the Quakers in Philadelphia at the Lazaretto. And unfortunately, they can't put a monument up at the Lazaretto to this because the Lazaretto where the slave ship arrived was torn down the year after. And the new Lazaretto that's there now is an 1802 structure. So that would not be appropriate. So there really is nowhere to memorialize this ship. Because they were given to the Quakers, each Quaker who took a slave from the Ganges had to sign a contract that they would agree to keep the slave in good condition, teach them to read and write before they were freed. But after a maximum of 20 years, they were to be freed. They had to be able to read and write and function in a society. They were not just going to be let loose. Without any potential for earning a living and keeping themselves. So it was really a very interesting moment, way ahead of Amistad and some of the other things. So anyway, this commission was all excited about that. So the rest of what I had put on the application just didn't seem to interest them that much. They said, the fact that there were the original settlers was interesting, but not of startling notice. So of course, I had been thinking about it because I figured that's what the problem was. And I mentioned to her that there really is no memorial for Quakers and Quaker graveyards specifically. And she said, what do you mean? There's Quakers all over southeastern Pennsylvania. There's all kinds of Quaker graveyards. And I said, yeah, but there's no Quaker graveyard like this one because it's actually the first one. And it was done, with Falls Meeting on the same day. But Falls Meeting now has all kinds of new markers over the space of the original burials. And those new markers are about, 6 inches tall and memorialize people who were put in on top of the original burials. And it was also nothing that the original settlers had done. The original settlers would have been put in trenches, and particularly William Yardley, who died, and I pulled this out of my hat, 1693 of an epidemic, a smallpox epidemic, would have been placed in a pit like the end of Amadeus, with the lime thrown in and the next bodies put down on top of him and next to him, and the pit would have been moved along. So the whole front of that cemetery where it's vacant is because there are pit graves. And she said, what? Oh, well, why don't you focus on that? So I guess we have a new focus that we can try to do. Now, I pulled out the map from 1926 of the cemetery, and I noticed that a lot of tombstones had been moved to that front section, but they are obviously way newer burials. Some of them were 20th century burials that have been moved to the front. So in 1926, that's where they were, but that's obviously not where they were originally. Many of them have moved since the time that map was created. So now we need to think about whether or not we're going to try to find a scout or someone to work with the project with Jim Majewski to actually survey the cemetery as it is with what markers are there and try to figure out where they actually go if we can. And if we want to move them back to where they are so that we can then write an application that is what I said it was to her. So that's where we are with this particular issue. Any thoughts?
Oh, and isn't there something also like one of the oldest stones in Bucks County is there or something
Yes.
like that? So that's something too.
That qualified us for the National Register, but the state has different criteria. They want it to be some big thing. And unfortunately, it's an 11-year-old child. So it's not significant. And I have scoured the records to try to find the sharps. And I have found sharps in Gloucester, New Jersey. I have found sharps in Pennsylvania about the right time period, but no Christopher Sharp, which was the father of Joseph. So, unless we come up with some more records on that and can say that it was significant in some way, that's not going to get us where we need to get. So what she was saying to me was, yeah, the Quaker thing, if we can articulate that this is a unique way that the Quakers buried with no markers because they felt everyone was equal in death, that is memorialized in Slate Hill Cemetery, not memorialized in other cemeteries, that would give us an opportunity to get the nomination.
And it would be reason to put a cemetery on, which they usually don't do, because you can only do that by recognizing a cemetery.
Okay, well, we definitely have a project then, Dan, that we're going to have to go forward on. To find us some Eagle Scouts, I will look in the local troops to see if we can get someone. Jim is willing to work with them.
Okay.
On doing the survey stuff. We personally have a laser level that they can use to cite and to actually map things out.
And Helen, I know your family's somewhat tied to the Scouts, right? But so I know you have connections there. But as just Monica, our Parks and Rec director, maintains. Because a lot of the Eagle Scout projects are Park and Rec projects, she maintains a list of potential Eagle Scout projects that she feeds to the various troops. So I might recommend
I'll
coordinating with her just to, if you want someone steered in your direction that helps. That
would be great, Dan, because basically I have my kids are all gone. The grandchildren are currently in troops 30 and 230. So, we could definitely contact them. My two grandchildren are too young. But so you definitely need a kid that's at least 16 to be able to do this properly. And then it goes well with his. There was a kid in 230 who had talked to me about a year ago about doing a Eagle project. And he should be 17 now. But he wanted to do engineering. And I said, I got the project. And I haven't heard back. So I have to see something so the kid can kind of link it to their college applications as well. Yep. Somebody who's going into that field, it makes a lot of sense to do something like this. So that would be cool. Okay, I'll definitely make a contact with Monica. Okay, so that's the state, the report on the state marker. I thought I'd handle now. Fourth on our agenda, we have the developer plans. The HARB group did send me a photo of the Troilo potential development next to the Ishmael house. And I didn't forward it. I was trying to find it, but they were asking us for comment on it since this group actually was the group that developed the design standards for the HARB to use as their legal booklet. And so just looking at it quickly, I could tell that the cadence of the buildings and the size, the scale was off. And that seemed to be what the Harb was saying anyway. So I didn't push it out to you guys so that you would have some input. There's no need to get upset about it yet. He has not come in with something final.
Helen, I'll give you an update because I'm also the liaison to the Planning Commission and the liaison to Harb. So I've met every night this week so far with a group.
So did they bring it into the Planning Commission?
They are planning to bring it into the Planning Commission probably early April. I think April 12th might be the Planning Commission meeting. Don't quote me on that, but I believe second Monday. So it'll likely get to the Planning Commission. I think Harb is April 13th. So it might get to the Planning Commission a day before it gets to Harb is how I understand it right now. I did just see for the first time that some renderings with I'm still trying, and it's last night actually after the Harb meeting. I think I saw them for the first time. The house at the point appears to be 4 or 5 units, at least with the rendering that I saw, and the house and then there's a parking lot sort of behind and angled, and then the other house with the stone center facade is separate, but is
what we call the
redone.
Danny Quill house actually has a name. It was called Carriage Crest, and at one time it was a single family house. But you can tell from the basement that sometimes somebody inserted this party wall and actually made it into a duplex. So it's.
I'm sorry. And in the report that was filed with the SHPO, that I look at I look at the SHPO. Part of my day job is doing coordinating Section 106 work. So I go on CRGIS all the time. So part of the report, there's a nice report from 1981 that's publicly available that talks about it's not a detailed report on the whole history of Edgewood Village, but it does try to catalog the buildings there, and there's a hand-drawn map that numbers them. And I believe I don't have it open in front of me at the moment, but I believe they refer to those two homes or those two structures as Stapler Tenant House 1 and Stapler Tenant House 2 or something along those lines. They're labeled numbers 3 and 4 on the report. I have it in my head.
Very confusing.
Yeah. So all that being said, there are some renderings out there. I think from what I'm told, he needs to do some updates to those renderings. I'm not sure what the planned land uses are, if it's going to be commercial or residential or some combination thereof, at least the proposal. But what I do know is that they're now have, my opinion, thankfully changed the plan to keep both homes. But
yeah, I knew that
it's going to be more than 2 homes. I'm not sure the level of expansion of the first one, but I think you probably know that already.
The original vision for Edgewood Village was to have it be more dense. It really was to kind of artificially create what would have occurred naturally if one owner hadn't owned all those properties, which is infill. That is new, but at least relates to the older buildings that are there. So something that's grossly out of scale can't work, but something that is small and cut up. And I know Luba and Steve were getting together with drawings to try to get that point across so that they wouldn't come up with straight walls that just endless canyons created. So hopefully, I'm just excited that they're finally doing something. And anything is better than nothing at this point. And we can just hope that they don't destroy the integrity inside of those structures and kind of allow them to existing old structures and allow them to kind of stay. To be quite honest, if you look at the Ishmael house, in the siding, you can see that there actually was a door that came out literally on the point, so that the tailor's shop was probably on grade level right at that point. And there must have been a little stoop over the top of that for people walking across the street to get to his shop, which is so cool. So, and seeing something like that restored would be awesome. but I'm not sure that the developer will be that sensitive when, if they rip it out or they tear down, dig down, and destroy that, there's a change in grade as you go through that house. It could be disastrous, but there's nothing we can do. It's privately owned. It's not controlled by the township, other than encouraging them to use the National Register standards to restore it, and possibly getting some tax credit for doing that, because that's a positive thing. And we can certainly support them heavily if they do that. I'll be happy to write reports that they've done great job in restoring it and keeping the wood exposed, or whatever else they do to try to keep it as much as possible. Certainly there are things that can be forgiven, like stairs that are too steep or doorways that are too small, because it's a historic house. And you can get away with a little bit more in terms of restoration work on it. Right, Joe? You've been taking these.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's all a matter of keeping with the guidelines, but that's only if it's registered, right? If it's not registered, then there's more.
The whole village is, so they are registered. They're all on the National Register.
All right, you're right. Because the village is right. Yeah. So it's just a matter of keeping with the Secretary of Interior's guidelines.
Yeah, I believe they're contributing elements to the village, so they have to stay within the same.
Yeah.
They have to adhere to the same building guidelines.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully, we'll be able to consult and make sure that ripping out windows, Dan, not allowed. Basically you have to rebuild. If you want to put interior secondary windows, fine, but you have to leave the openings the way they are. You can't make them bigger. Just keep the cadence of the building the way it is, the facades.
Yeah. From what I've seen to date for this, obviously, please, if obviously you're all interested in it, please keep an eye out for the Planning Commission meeting where you'll see more. From what I understand, excuse me, to date, they're maintaining 2-story structures with not a flat front. They're trying to go back, do something a little interesting, different colors, different
Awesome.
Facade types. It's not perfect from what I can see, but I think they're still working on it. So we'll see how it looks. I'm interested to see how it compares to the proposed footprint compares to the new footprint, the parking spaces. It's not a huge area, so when you put in that much parking, they have to deal with stormwater management, so I don't know where they're putting that. So it's going to be interesting to see if it's the proverbial 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack or not. So keep an eye. I think it could be interesting. Could be a great thing for that corner. But we just, devil's in the details. So we all have to keep an eye on it.
That is so true. And it couldn't be more. That one and Biles' house as well. The devil's in the details. I've had a couple of comments this past week from various people on Facebook about the horrible intersection, etc. The traffic light, I can't understand why the HARB didn't haul them in for that traffic light, because there are ways to do a light at that intersection that is in keeping with the villages on the National Register, and that's not it. They've done it in Glenside and other places around here, and certainly in other states where they have hung lights, old-fashioned lights. It's allowed to do that in a historic village, and we shouldn't have that big honking piece of stuff at that corner. And then you'd have a nicer bend around the Biles building, walks, and just a much more amenable village feel. And I know people want to speed their cars through that intersection and through that entire village, but the whole idea was to slow things down and make it a walkable, pedestrian type village. And we got to kind of hold our guns and hope the supervisors can hold their guns too. And actually, after all this, after 30 years of watching it decay, actually end up with something nice.
Yeah. And I will say, from a supervisor perspective, I do think all the supervisors are keen. We all disagree on things here and there, but we are all keen to take advantage of this opportunity
Right.
to do something nice here that meets everyone's needs and meets the requirements of being part of the village. So hopefully, knock on wood, as I like to do.
Village. Time has come. It's
so.
always, since I've been here, it's always been owned by one developer. Before Mr. Troilo, it was Mr. Flogi. Flogi was the attorney for Fairless Works, for the whole steel operation that created Fairless Works and for the whole neighborhood development that created Lower Makefield. So he was the main attorney, and he bought up that entire village. And when he died, his estate pretty much passed it intact to Mr. Troilo. So it's always been held as, as this thing that we're going to make it great someday. And in the meantime, we're just put in tenants and let it deteriorate, and it's gotten out of hand. So
and now across the way there, kind of catty corner, Troilos are putting in that new restaurant. I believe there was an article about.
We're talking about that's the Biles building. That's what I'm talking
that's the
about.
Biles. Okay.
That ugly. I mean, I have never seen such a large. I don't know what kind of material that is. It's not aluminum. It's gigantic, whatever kind of strange compressed metal light stand that is, and it replaced one that was about this big. Now it's this big. They took out a tree. I have pictures from 2007 that show how nice that whole side of the building was. And now it's just, we need to kind of step in and say, whoa, that this is historic district PennDOT. Come on, get on the stick and give us something that will match, not totally destroy what's there. It's balanced by the whole counter corner is this gigantic box of electrical equipment. I drove by that the other day. It didn't make a whole lot of. I noticed that. And unfortunately, it's just got away from us between changing in the government, the internal management of the township and supervisors and everything. It just went up. So that's where we are. Agenda item 5 is the house on Mill Road. I did contact Jim Majewski about the possibility of getting some of that stone to stockpile at the township. My husband has been in contact with the river quarry up the Delaware River Quarry. The guy who runs that is really, really nice and willing to donate. And he had already said if we wanted more stone, he would get us more stone. But it's nice to use the stone that's already been used in old houses if they're going to be demolished the way that this one is apparently going to be demolished. I would love for somebody to be able to talk to that person and try to convince them to save that old house. The more I'm doing research into it, it looks like it was the Derbyshire mill house. So there was a mill that kind of came out of the fields on the top of the hill, and the mill sluice ran past that house and then down to the creek. So this Derbyshire was a oh shoot, what is it called? I'm going to say hammerer, but no, it's a fueling mill, a fulling mill. So he ran a fulling mill on Broad Creek right there. So that was big hammers basically, and powered by water that would make the fabric actually full. That's what it was, why it was called that. So they would bang the woven fabric so that it would become nice and thick and lush. And so that's what was there, like in the 1780s and 1790s. There's been a long-term rumor or story associated with that house on Mill Road that soldiers were actually, that was the field hospital when Washington was coming through. That could be wishful thinking on the part of the owners. I'm pretty sure it was there. It is on our 1798 tax list. It wasn't a very nice structure, but it's kind of over the top of the hill, so it couldn't be seen from New Jersey. So who knows? I mean, it might be a real story. The people that lived there apparently said that it was, but there's no documentation of any of this stuff. So we're just hopeful. It's a shame. So if it's going to come down, I'd really like to be able to document it. So if we learn when it's coming down, if the permit is issued, I'd really appreciate some notice so we can run out with our camera, at least take a look. how it's put together. Joe has commented about that a lot. Do you want to say something, Joe?
Right. Yeah, I think that's important. If we're going to, take a structure out, we should document its location, its architectural features, its dimensions, have photographs of it that we have with the township. In case anybody wants to come in and do research later on, the property is not there, but at least we'll have some documentation around that. So, we can get some notification around that. We can, and obviously permission to go on the property. We can do that.
Yeah, I guess the best way to do that would be to put a bug in Jim Majewski's ear. He'll be the one who's the most aware of when things are going on, because they'll have to get construction permits and the like and give him a construction schedule. So once that starts to happen, then he'll know when things are going to happen. He can notify this group as to more detail and help coordinate that, because he'll be directly in touch with the owners and the contractors.
So Helen, I'll take the action item to contact Jim on that. And I'll also work with what do we need to do to properly document in terms of, photography and measurements and things like that. So when we go out there, we have some type of a plan in mind of how to do this. Okay.
That would be good. Thank you, Joe. If you want to take that, I'm going to put that in your lap.
Yeah, I'll take that piece. Right.
Thanks. That would be super. And keep me appraised. Dan, for your information, Joe and I went up the first week in January to the Mercer Museum and started going through the road dockets that were originally filed for the county. And there were several Lower Makefield roads that were in those first few roads that were officially made 30 feet wide and ditched on both sides. And no fences. Nobody could build fences across the road. So they were public roads. And it was really interesting to figure that out, which roads were actually here. Edgewood Road was not one of them. And Sandy Run Road was one of the very first roads that people were petitioning to get that open, because it was a cutoff between Oxford Valley Road. So farmers coming from the south to get to Yardley's Ferry wanted to use Sandy Run Road to get to the Yardley Langhorne Road. And it was denied until, was it 1765 or so, they finally got it through.
And we're still trying to get it open.
It's just amazing to see that, and realize that road has been such a hassle for so long. And we're going to try to get together and get a map of which roads there were and when they came into operation. We're working with Jim on that as part of the projects that we're doing, right, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is the old business videos and informational context for public schools in the township history. It actually came home really quickly to me because of my granddaughters in fourth grade at Edgewood. And her teacher was saying that they were having real difficulty teaching Pennsylvania history this year, and they didn't have any videos that they thought were good enough for fourth graders. So she immediately got on and said, "Oh, my grandma's here," and hauled me over. So I have put together a video for the fourth grade at Edgewood for her particular class, and her teacher has opened it to the other fourth graders. So fourth grade class at Edgewood. So that starts next Thursday. So I'm actually doing the first segment. It's going to be 5 or 6 segments. And the first one is going to be on Native Americans and the first contacts with the Swedes and the Dutch in the Delaware Valley. So it's done. I'm working on the second one, which is going to be William Penn and the first settlers into Bucks County. So it looks like this is my personal project going on for the rest of at least this semester, to kind of pare this all down and get it. And I'm doing it at a fourth grade level so that then it can be shared. I'm going to contact Ann Langtree down at Pennsbury, who used to be a chair of this commission, and see if we can get some other contact with other Pennsbury education school, fourth grade schools. I'd really like to do a more sophisticated version for the high school levels. I do actually teach AP U.S. history. I think you guys all know that, but every year I do the testing for the ETS on the AP exam. But I also, of course, teach college level. So that is something that I really think needs to be done as well. But at this point, this became an emergency. So it's taken over. So that's what's happening. Has anyone else done anything on this?
No, but I'm happy to talk to Corey Hill about it because it's where my daughter is.
How old is she?
She's a first grader.
Ah.
But she's in what they call the enrichment programs for math and writing that they have at the first grade. So she's always looking. Their classes are always looking for something interesting. They're too young for that, but
It's cool.
Principal Reb is always interested in that type of thing. So if once you've gotten through this and you're able to share it, I'll be more than happy to introduce you.
So Lucy's at my house. She's at my house 3 days a week. So I've got my little zip drive that I plug into her Pensbury laptop, and then we can manipulate it and show it to the whole fourth grade that she's connected to, which is Edgewood School. So if we could get this done, if I get this done, I can get sent. I can talk anytime to other classes. I actually have all those clearances too, so I can actually go in and do it when they're in session from a computer someplace in the school as well. But since I'm not teaching at Temple, it's very this is at least fulfilling that part of my life and not making me totally depressed.
So Helen,
it's good.
Do you ever consider maybe we do webinars that we could invite the people from Lower Makefield Township to learn a little bit about that, and then we can record it. We do it on a Zoom meeting like this. We can record it then and save it for later. It could be used actually by teachers or someone at that point too. Did you ever think about doing something like that?
James had been talking about that, right, James?
Yeah, I think it would be a great idea to have some sort of, like an organized event. We could have someone come and give a 10-minute presentation or like a 15-minute lecture or something like that, and then record that aspect and maybe a little formal questioning from whoever's hosting the event. And then after, we can stop recording and just have a round table with different people, like a Q&A with an audience.
I think that's awesome. And that's something you could put on the township website as just a permanent link to township history. That would be very useful. We have a township YouTube page too, that YouTube channel, I should say, that we can use. There's township Facebook, but that gets lost in Facebook posts. But
I do the Facebook page. The
Lower Makefield Township History Facebook page. Yeah, I'm talking about the township's official Facebook page where they just post. Like we're probably on that right now, actually.
Right. I was thinking actually of contacting Monica about this as kind of doing a bunch of like adult type seminars, so high school kids could certainly understand what I'm talking about at that level, and also if people wanted to hook into it, they could. And there are people out there, believe it or not, who are interested in history. And my take on it's a little, I'm going to give you the bitter with the sweet. I mean, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff, and they're going to get both. But at least they can make some determinations on their own as what values to put on it. Try to keep it value neutral as possible. But basically. There's really cool stuff that's out there. Corey Hill was just occurring to me because one of my other little projects here that we're going to get down to is beginning to plan for 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution and Washington coming through the township. And Joe and I have been researching part of doing this road project is to research what roads could he have used. And he was clearly crossing at Yardley's Ferry and at the Morrisville Ferries to come over. And where did he go to go up river? It either is in sight of New Jersey, which would be the Falls Road. River Road was not completed at that point. It was just the path. It was all closed off. So it would have had to be the Great Falls Road, which is the Yardley Marsfield Road. That can be seen from New Jersey with good glass. So it would be much more likely that he used Stony Hill Road and possibly parts of Oxford Valley Road. So looking at that, we're trying to be trying to determine where he would have placed the troops. There's a lot of historians have argued about this for years, and a lot of them say Jericho Mountain, but I really think that's too far. I think he was, especially for big wagons and artillery, he would be much more inclined to be. This is why we're so concerned about the Prickett development, is it would be much more likely that he would have used that barn and that house, and the house is down along Stony Hill Road in between the Langhorne Road and the Newtown Road. That would be much more sensible, because you could then move, should the British come across, to either Philadelphia or to Newtown, and then points west. So it would make much more sense than to go north until he made the decision. So he was here almost 3 weeks until, basically they crossed back into New Jersey, and the decision is made, we estimate, somewhere around the 17th of December to actually go forward and move everybody up at that point to the crossing, to Baker's Ferry. So it really kind of is an interesting project. The thought that houses here and what kind of presentation this township could put on in time for that would be amazing. And I'm just really hoping that the supervisor will get on board with it, because I think it could be really something special that people will remember for years. That, the history in your own backyard, it's right here. That's my speech. Sorry.
If anyone knows Lin-Manuel Miranda, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we get along. I really think we do. Hamilton's my favorite after Franklin. I mean, I love Franklin too, but Hamilton is really cool. And the fact that they come with these warts, that's awesome. They're real people and they're really grounded. All right, enough of that. Part of this, number 6, is also, Barbara, anything new on the octagonal schoolhouse?
I had called him a couple times and I have not gotten, he knows my phone number now, so he's not picking up.
Oh,
But I'm going to use my cell phone next time as a decoy. But he is still talking, and he just says that supervisors have to get back to him, and he felt he was wronged. And in a way, when he talks to me, there's two sides to his story. So I invited him to come up. I said, when COVID is over, he's in Florida now. I said, why don't you come up and, face to face? We have a whole new group of people, and he's not as negative as he was when we were first talking.
Why don't you explain it to Dan? He doesn't.
I'm trying to get the gentleman, which I thought was Mr. Wieners. I thought he was a relative of one of the families I knew in the education field that I'm working in. And it turns out he's not. But he owns that little property right across the street from CVS Pharmacy on that. And I'm trying to see if we could get that property from him and put a plaque, because it's the original octagonal schoolhouse in Bucks County. And it was, it was basically everybody. It was like inclusive. So that would be great. I told him that we would put up a nice plaque, and he's not turning away, but he's really slow on the draw. And I think he's getting up in his years. So we have to do it quickly. But at the beginning, he didn't want to hear about it. And then I listened to him. And then now he's at least talking. And I do keep in touch with him and ask him about how he's doing and so forth. But he's not moving on the fact that he owns the property. And I said, you can't even do anything there. You can't even put an outhouse there. If you came back, you couldn't be there. So why don't you just, put it as a landmark? And hopefully that's my mission, to hopefully get it done. But it's a long road.
Well, it's been.
I'm sorry, Barbara, can I just make sure I'm thinking of the right spot? I'm thinking of, the supervisors kind of talked about this a little bit.
Big Oak Road.
Big Oak and
Oxford
Valley,
Catty
between that walking path that goes up to Regency
Yes.
and
Yes.
Oxford Valley, right?
It's closer
in
to
those
the
woods?
road. It's actually
Yeah.
closer to the, Big Oak Road.
It's closer to Big Oak. Okay.
Yeah. Like if you walk, I went over there a couple times. When you go there, there's nothing. If you see a few bricks, you're lucky. So I don't know if they'd be buried there, but it's like an eyesore now.
He has a quarter of an acre, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a long straight triangle that goes back to nothing at the point where it hits Regency. Old Oxford Valley Road is on the west side of his property, and Oxford Valley, so he's in the right of way of Oxford Valley Road.
Yeah.
So the only thing they could really put on it technically would be an ugly sign, like the beautiful thing down in Middletown Township. So, basically we won't want that. It was the reason why it was originally called the Octagon Center, is that little schoolhouse, the octagonal schoolhouse, was the first in Bucks County. It was the prototype for the nation, and it was done by an 18-year-old Lower Makefield Township boy, Moses Moon, who had just graduated from Haverford and gotten all his credentials, and was going off to survey and run what was already the Moon Nurseries. So his family had already had way too much money, and he didn't even have to work, but he did do that. So he decided that he was, instead of joining the military like so many other people in Lower Makefield were doing that year in 1774, he was gathering a subscription from all the local farmers of scantling and wood and stone and plaster to build a pre-public school at the intersection of Falls, Lower Makefield, and Middletown Township. And he had this landscape architecture idea of this is what it should look like. And it became the quintessential, the first octagonal schoolhouse. That's what we got. Steve Sanasiero is very aware of it. That's why he got them to move the road south. And there's only one lane when the turn comes. Mm-hmm. Because if there were two lanes, it would take out what's left of the foundation. Jim and I have talked about, there's a little woods now. If you see two, they're dead at this point, ash trees that are probably a good foot across. The edge of the building is right in front of those two ash trees. Okay, so the back edge of the building, the actual door was on Old Oxford Valley Road. The outhouses were behind it, so right up against Big Oak Road. And I did see a well back behind it, so there's like the remnants of a well. It could be a great archaeological dig. The copse of woods, if you go into that woods on the side of Big Oak Road, it's actually at least 6 feet below Oxford Valley Road, and it's very quiet. It's very peaceful.
Yeah. There's a culvert that drains into there closer to on Oxford Valley Road.
On the other side of Old Oxford Valley Road, but it actually in the woods, it's a little sloped woods, and it's actually really quiet. And Jim and I were talking, they could make a nice little picnic road. So at some point, if there's some kind of road crossing for pedestrians of Oxford Valley Road, and you probably have to put a center island in Oxford Valley Road at this point. If you were going to even attempt it, that would make an ideal acquisition for the township to get that property. And as if we can get him, right now he's still paying taxes on it and pays it every year. I talked to Becky, she said they get a Visa card every year, and he's still paying taxes on this. I know when Grace was still alive, she said that they should get out how much he had paid in taxes and offer him that as a compensation and just, get it from him. No one wants to go through a condemnation process. It would be really great if somebody from the supervisors would take Barbara's numbers and call him, probably with Barbara.
One of the things that he did say is that he said that he has contacts in this area, and he knows that the corner property, even for a quarter of an acre, goes probably for more than he has paid for the taxes. Because I already said to him, how about, even Steven, whatever you paid for your taxes. I said, I didn't talk to anybody. I said, I'm just talking on my own. And I said, and I would personally see, since I am an educator, see that corner is, done well. And he said that he's thinking about making a killing on the money. And I said, it'll never happen. I said it'll never happen. I said, but at least he's talking, and I think Helen is right. I think if I can get some help from somebody else higher up, that would be phenomenal, because he's at the point now where he's at least talking, and I'm saying to him, look, you're getting up in there, and eventually somebody's going to get this property and it's going to turn into a dump. I said, so why don't we do something?
Or sign. Oh God,
put your name on it, and so it would be good to have somebody else help. But the supervisors right now have to be the new, like Danny, you might be able to do it. But the old ones know, because he knows all those names and he's not very happy with
Yeah.
So you might be a good.
Well, it depends who you talk to, I guess. But what I will say, if he's looking at dollar signs, where the township is less competitive, let's say, is that by law we have to go and get, I think it's 2 or 3 appraisals on any purchase like this, and we can essentially offer like the average of the 3 or something like that. So appraisals are typically lower than what he could get for it if someone was actually interested in purchasing it and developing it, which as we all know is unlikely.
Impossible. Yeah,
but you never know what's in someone's head or what they think they can get for it. And when they come to the realization that they may not, or something else. So, we have a process for that. Most typically we do that for open space relative to like what the EAC recommends. We have an open space plan. But it's from 2009. I don't recall if this.
I begged them to put it on. I begged them. Steve Saniciero asked them to put it on. But they said, "Oh, we don't really want that."
I think that would be the trick. That'd be the trick to get it, though. Actually.
Because then it's, for better or worse, that's what the township uses to when we, not that we have any money to burn right now, but for this type of thing. But that's generally what we're. I'll be honest, we're a little bit lazy. There's a existing inventory, and you go back to the existing inventory to see what's still high up on the list, on the priority list for these types of acquisitions versus what we might have available. And obviously real estate is also about timing. So if it's,
I really think it's the gateway to the township, and because you're getting so much development on the west side of that road now, you're asking for trouble if people try to cross over to Coles. I mean, that's going to be absolutely insane. With kids riding bikes and stuff like that. So we have to address it. And I really think that this could work out for a lot of good things. I can see an Eagle project to stabilize what stones are left, do a dig.
It could be really interesting. I don't disagree with you at all. Acquisitions are tough to come by at this point, but it doesn't appear that this is I don't want to jinx it, that it's in any danger of any soon-to-be acquisition, but we also, I don't know that the individual that owns the property is doing much to make sure that the resources that are there are staying in at least as good condition as they are now.
Well, so I actually have pictures from, I found them this afternoon. I've had a computer crash as well as a phone crash at the same time, which is horrible. But I found pictures from 1995 that I took at that site. And there are half the number of stones there now that there were in 95. In 95, you could actually see the bend in the wall to see one of the quarters of the octagon. And now that bend has been knocked out. And there was a pillar that was about 8 feet high, and that's gone. So it's all been knocked over. There's a lot of the stone is still there. I actually went with Krista McConaughey 2 years ago. You have to go before the poison ivy comes out because it's just loaded with poison ivy. But they've been pushed into the interior of the structure. So it had a wooden roof and it had a wooden floor, and everything else was stone. And a lot of the stone is still there. If we get other stone that's from the area of the same time period, there are lots of pictures of, we could make. There's actually a plan up in the Mercer Museum because Moses Moon with his papers, gave the plan with all the names of all the people who contributed to the building, and it cost them, I forget how much it was, about $900 to build it. So it's such a cool building, and it would really be of state significance, if not of national significance. I know Steve Saniciero is way on board with it. So it could be something that would be really an excellent project as well. We have a lot of these, Dan. We have a lot of these projects. Okay, number 7, we have Keystone Grant is coming up in the fall. Joe's really on
not
this.
in the fall though, right? I mean, no, it's coming up now. I mean, I think it's due this month, right? They're actually awarded in the fall, but the applications are due right now. So we have
Is
to
it
plan.
really?
Yeah, we have to plan for 2022 on this.
And we've been missing these cycles because, well, we have to blame COVID for the last year, but the year before, because of the change in the managers, Terry was always on us to get some of the applications out to get the Keystone money. Since we have a certified local government with Edgewood Village, we do go to the front of the line when the money comes out, Dan. So as the state is actually doing anything, some of this money that's being spent right now will be available in the next couple of cycles. And as I said, we have lots of projects. The walls at Slate Hill really need to be redone. There's all kinds of township properties. And I know Kurt isn't up to speed where Terry was, where he would share with us what we could do to write grants to get some of this stuff done. But there are some really competent people now on this board, and we really think that we need to have some kind of a meeting with her as soon as possible.
Yeah. It is, just to make sure I'm aware, is this the Keystone? I'm looking at the state website, State Library of Pennsylvania website, to be specific. It's the Keystone Recreation Park and Conservation Fund. Is that this program?
I think
Or
it's
is
through
that-
the State Historic Preservation Office.
Yeah, it's
SHPO?
SHPO.
Okay.
Yeah,
SHPO.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if the office sits in that. That's why I was a little bit hesitant.
But that's what actually paid for the last roof on the Satterthwaite House, which has kept the thing intact as long as it has. We had the roof redone, I think it was 2004, as part of a Keystone State Grant, which we helped Terry, and the grant writer at the township at the time was Suzanne, and we worked with her to get that nominated.
So the application deadline for March for 2021 was March 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was in February, so I just thought February.
So these are the Keystone Historic Preservation Construction Grants.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. There's
so
a
there's
planning grant and a
really good
construction
money.
grant.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. And since we're kind of strapped for funds anyway, and you want to get those houses done, the problem is, we probably have some conflict over where the money should be spent and how much can be done by a 501c3 and how much has to be done by the township. But we're here to help. So please let us help is all I'm saying.
I love grants. I
love writing them. I have no problem.
I just want to say, the idea of writing them, I like writing them too, and I've done a lot of writing. But one of the secrets of getting the money and the grants is that if there could be some assistance where you actually have a spreadsheet that tells you when things are due. And that, I know in education, we went for the simplest, like even $300 grants, because it said deadline March 1st, write this and do this. So I think that in our case, we're missing deadlines because we don't even know when the deadlines are. So maybe a spreadsheet or something that we can get a handle on, then somebody could be aware of it and say, look, I'll take that on. I'll write that. I'll do this.
Yeah. The other thing about this particular grant program this one, and I'm just reading this from the website, probably need more info, is that they require 50% match.
Right. 50%.
So in order for us to do that, we would also have to come up with a budget for the project, and then we'd have to look at potentially putting it in the budget in the September-ish time period is when that budget really gets in a high gear.
I'll let you know that Terry used to use the real estate value from an appraisal as part of the match. Okay. So, that it was always worked to the township's benefit when we could do that, especially if there's a rental fee associated with it, or the, a rental possibility if the house is restored, that you're going to collect X amount due to an appraisal. So I mean, he was always looking at that as possible ways to help fund a lot of these projects, and there's no reason why we can't do that as well. And at this point, we have the Slack House at the golf course. There's a little barn there. There's the house at 5 Mile Woods. I don't know if that's even rented yet. I know that we were just talking about you're renting the Huff House. There's and then the houses and barns, perhaps separately on the Patterson farm. There's just a lot of structures that the township is in charge of. There's also a barn with a earthen floor at Kids Kingdom that was once looked at to have a new barn put on the top of it. Whether that's going to ever happen or not, I don't know. But as it is, it's a structure that could be also used for township meetings, and God knows we need a lot of those going forward. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and I know nobody wants to see Kurt burdened with a lot of useless stuff. So that's why we're here. We are, as reporters, we're happy to do it.
So Helen, you mentioned a lot of different properties, and I think I'm assuming you all have heard this, but one of the things we're trying to, let me back up. So related to that, so when I was chair a year and a half ago or whatever it was, I put on what I pushed for was to come up with an inventory of township properties, historic and otherwise, to see because no one really knew what we had for resources. So I asked them to do an inventory of all the properties, their current condition, and use that as the basis. There is a draft inventory report out there, but the next steps, which were kind of put on hold for a while, are to actually do some further assessment to understand the costs associated with the basic cost of getting them to, I'll say, habitable or structurally sound at minimum. And then there's some additional usable. Well, maybe not even that, but and then there's that next step to understand, what's the plan for that? If it's a structure, like how do we plan on using it in the future? Right. And then if we're going to do that,
cost benefit ratio, all that stuff.
That stuff. And I think hopefully this year we may move that forward. It's something that's been frustrating me a little bit, to be honest, but Supervisor Blundy has made mention of it in. Yeah,
she said something about a special committee, but we're actually here and we're feeling a little insulted.
Well, yeah, please don't. I hope you. I don't know if she's ever been the liaison to your board. I know this is my first year, but I think that committee I'll say should, but I'm fairly certain most if not all of the board does feel there is a need for at least one or two HARB or Historic Commission folks on that committee, whatever it's going to be ad hoc, and then a few other folks that are more planning related type folks from financial perspective, just for that end of things. But it hasn't been formalized yet because they're not done with. We're still waiting on them to finish the report to do some initial assessments for getting it. We're probably a year and a half behind on that.
Who's doing the report, Dan?
What's that?
Who's doing the report?
It's a combination of internal staff. So one of the good things about Lower Makefield is we have a couple engineers on site on staff, not necessarily performing engineering duties, but we have professional engineers on staff that have a lot of knowledge of at least know where they are and have some pretty good knowledge of what state they're in. But at the same time, our township engineer, the engineering firm, Remington Vernick, is playing a role in that. And they have on staff, as I understand it, have structural engineers that can do those types of assessments of the buildings.
Right.
They're not doing cultural resources assessments. This is purely.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah.
That I understand. And they also have environmental engineers because some of these sites the area surrounding the buildings may have some lead contamination issues, for example, like
Right.
at Patterson Farm, where paint over the years has flaked off so much that it's become some higher concentrations in the soil than you may expect in the immediate, first 10 feet or so of the structure that
Corn
needs
works
to be
well.
addressed. Well,
Corn supposedly absorbs iron or absorbs the lead.
Problem with some of that is when you do that, I'm an environmental scientist,
Right. I
big
know.
into that stuff, just if you didn't know. So one of the issues with doing something like that is it becomes an attractive nuisance where
Right.
Animals may eat that corn and it bioaccumulates the metals and whatnot, and you can essentially kill the animal. So we got to be careful about that. But so that's the general approach is in the works. But the next step, the next couple steps are developing plans for reuse, developing budgets, and some sort of schedule for implementing these plans. And a big part of that will be grants. I would think that grants and
Right.
once we make it safe, it's tough to implement some of the ideas, let's say, with volunteers and others that have some great skill sets before we are able to make it, let's say, environmentally safe. We can't expose people to lead and other contaminants without a high degree of liability and,
Or this big sign off. But anyway.
Well, I know.
I'm just concerned,
I wish, but
and I'm just raising the concern that they may have not put some of the structures on. I don't know whether the little spring house at North Park is on there. I don't know. That's been an Eagle project forever. I mean, we keep giving that to more Eagle Scouts. And as I said, that barn foundation, the Ritchie barn, which is great.
To that end, Helen, I would say, it's no secret that we're doing this. It's on the agenda every 2 weeks, township property inventory. So feel free. I know we keep saying, reach out to Jim for lots of things, but he's like the database for the township on a lot of this stuff, right? I would say feel free to reach out to Jim to see the status, see if he's got like a table of contents type of thing that has the list of all the property / structures. And if you have any to add,
do we have, is he looking at ruins as well? I mean, there's several ruins that are adjacent to retention basins that I know of, like right now. I could rattle off 3 or 4.
Yeah. So what generally, I'll start more generally than kind of move in, and then some of it's a little bit unclear, to be honest, because I haven't seen the report in a while. But generally, it's an inventory of any township property, whether it's historic or not. So township parks, basins, but farmland preservation stuff, and then conservation land, et cetera. But really, the primary focus is to eventually drill down into the structure. Patterson Farm's an obvious one with all those structures, but at the golf course, you have the golf course, but you also have the house, right?
And the barns.
So all of those things, I believe they're organized by township property. So if it's on a township owned property, then it should be included, but it would be under the property itself. So what you would do is take a look at what he's written up as an inventory for that particular property, and then say, hey, we know there's XYZ there as well, so let's put that in the...
That's kind of what I'm worried about, that they don't have. I know there's at least 2 house ruins in 5 Mile Woods. There's a bank barn, just the bank of the bank barn, right off the parking lot at 5 Mile Woods. There's a house foundation in the woods at Derbyshire, right where Mill Road hits Oxford Valley. There's a huge sycamore tree. If you go up to that sycamore tree and walk around it, you'll find a hand dug covered over fireplace support. That's right there, very close to the surface. They're actually attractive nuisances for kids because they'll go over and destroy them. But there's a lot of stuff like that all over the township. The locks down on the canal. I mean, who has charge over those? They've been a constant source of problems for the homeowners that back up to the canal. That when people fall in or dogs fall in the canal and get stuck in the lock, what do you do? I mean, it's kind of crazy. There's just all over the township. There's actually the remains of the McCormick Duck Farm that's on the right off the off ramp of 295 by the top of the. Have you ever walked back in there between there and the canal?
On the canal side?
Yeah.
Okay. I live on the other side of that, so I was curious as to which.
So north of, do you live north of the on ramp or the?
I live just
Maple?
south of the. I live on the opposite side of the street from Maplevale's the neighborhood across.
Yeah, well, if you go through the backyards of the houses on Maplevale, they're up to 295. You'll find the actual concrete storage bins for the duck farm. They're just left there in the woods, and it looks like a strange, people go, what is them? I got calls. So I remember going down with Florence and going, duck farm, ponds, and conveyor belt systems and things that are just left in the woods. But you see things like that, like all over this township. North Park used to have a whole collection of old gas stoves in the back end of the woods when Margaret was still living there. It was just insane.
Yeah.
But just.
So what I would recommend is Jim's working on this. I'm sure he would appreciate some free consultation, consultant
Okay,
and
I should
review.
go talk to Jim. All right, talk to Jim.
I mean, he has everything.
I'd like to know what's on his list, though. I'll tell you some more stuff. Okay, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
Dan, one quick point. Dan, those Keystone Grants, I mean, there's two types. There's a construction grant, but there's also planning grants. So once we have the inventory, if we're trying to figure out what to do with it, how much is it going to cost to restore it or preserve it or what have you, we can apply to Keystone Grants for that too.
Yeah. So, and that's to your point. I'll back that up a little bit. My experience with grants is it's if you have sort of almost like not that it's necessarily a shovel ready project, but if you're showing that you're doing the work,
right.
Then they'll give you some extra funds to keep doing the work. If you just have an idea that sounds neat,
right,
they don't know that you're actually going to execute, and it's a little riskier for them if the money's going to be well spent. In this case, we have a program that we're trying to, we've set the groundwork for it. We're trying to build it up, no pun intended. And, I think that sets us up nicely for future grants if we can get this inventory done.
I agree.
So I totally agree, Joe. If any of those that you can identify that the township hasn't gone for, we will absolutely please let us know. Let Kurt
There's resources. There's just untapped resources out there that we're really happy to help you with. Our purpose, I don't know if you've looked at it, but our purpose is basically to inform supervisors of what there is as part of the historic fabric of Lower Makefield, and what you need to look at as part of your responsibility to preserve Pennsylvania. So whatever we can do to help to get you up to speed on that, that's why we're here. And
I'm a history nerd. I love this stuff.
Oh,
so
good. I'm glad.
And I work.
So glad we finally got a history nerd, guys! Yay!
My brother was a history major, but I work with all the cultural resources folks in my job. So we compare notes.
I actually had to switch to a psychology to graduate from Penn, but I went back to it for grad school, so that was awesome. Get back to history.
Yeah, my family, my family came over from what's the date stone on the family house in Quebec? It's 1630, I believe. But my grandfather was the first person to come to the U.S. So we don't have a long history.
Right?
What's that?
Eastern Massachusetts, right?
Yes.
That's what that's what Maine was.
Oh, I know.
Eastern Massachusetts.
He actually he actually moved the family to Boston first for a handful of years,
so he came
and then moved to Maine. But by that point, it was Maine. But my grandfather was born in 1901, so he just would have celebrated his 120th birthday a few weeks ago.
Wow.
So anyway, that's it. But we like to. My long lost cousin is on the Quebec, as we all say, the Quebec Genealogical Society.
Grenier is really a French name, yes.
Ben oui, no. but it used to be Galnier, like the hair
It's
product.
actually, there's Acadians that were shipped to Philadelphia from Nova Scotia named Grenier. I've got them on my list because I was doing the records for the Catholics. The Acadians show up in Philadelphia.
Well, there are a lot of my grandfather's one of 14, my father's one of 18. So
Awesome.
they're obviously French Canadian Catholics, just by virtue of number of kids. But no, what was I going to say? He moved the family to Boston with a bunch of other French Canadians to work in and then they moved up to Maine and lived in a mill town for a long time. And I grew up in the family house where they had 18 kids, and I have I don't have a big house here, but it's smaller than my house.
What town?
Lewiston. It's an old textile mill town, but
So you know where Millsocket is?
Millsocket or Millinocket?
Millinocket, yeah.
Yes, it's the last little town on your way up to Mount Katahdin, which is
Well, the Allagash, actually. That's where the Boy Scouts went for the Allagash trip. But yeah. Just,
Hey, Helen, do we have a
interesting.
lot more to talk about? Because I've been on Zoom
No, we're
calls
done,
all
Becky.
day, and
Thank you so
I'm
much.
done today.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank you so much, sweetie. No,
Yeah.
our next meeting is April 14th at 7:30, hopefully in person. But we'll see at 7:30 on April 14th, everybody. Anybody else have anything that you need to let us know?
Nope, sounds good.
When I took all the minutes, I'll send
Okay.
them to everyone. I'm
minute-
sorry.
Do we
I'm
have
so
a
tired.
motion to adjourn?
I think Becky made that motion already.
Sorry, but it's 9 o'clock. I'm
Yeah, okay,
done.
Becky.
I'm getting a cup of tea and chilling out. So
Yeah.
thanks everyone. And thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
I think it was longer because Dan, I wish he had that information beforehand because we've all heard that before. So
Sorry.
frankly, that was like a redo for us, which is great, but this is our time. I've always said as volunteers. So it would have been nice if he had that beforehand, might be something to think about for the next time, so just my 2 cents. So. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Becky.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.